Well, good evening and welcome. My name is Steve Sneed. I'm the Managing Artistic Director of Cultural Programs here at Seattle Center. And I thank you all for attending tonight's event. This is called the Festál Reimagining, powered by PechaKucha. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's what it's powered by, PechaKucha. I like to say it. First, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are on indigenous land, the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people. Thank you. Today, we have invited you to join us in our final special event for the Festál 20th anniversary. There are still 4 festivals left, so make sure you attend at least 3 of them. Since July, groups of young people have been looking at various aspects of cultural celebration and now have the opportunity to express themselves regarding these ethnic celebrations. PechaKucha is the style of presentation. The style requires 20 slides in 20 seconds per slide. This provides a boundary for them to work within. Now, I once heard beautiful art always has a boundary. Like a picture has a frame, a play has a time limit. So, we expect great things when we have boundaries. So ultimately, this is the opportunity to inspire experimentation, exploration, creativity from the next generation, to help make a bridge between the younger generation and the older generation. These young people have really invested their time because they have a hunger for this work. We as adults have to meet them halfway and invest in them. As a young person, I thought back and I thought, you know, I had adults who invested in me. They put their time into me learning to be just better at community organizing and community involvement, whether that was at my church or the community center or the baseball coach. All of those adults invested in me. And I didn't really realize it till I got older. But it takes time to do that, and it takes a commitment. But I think these young people will prove to you that they are interested in what you do. They are interested in cultural activity and community organizing and all the things that they'll talk about this evening. So the event is powered by PechaKucha. That's actually the case. It is a sponsorship, right? They give us the right to use their format. But I have to say that it is driven by Sarah Leon Moreno. Sarah has invested her time in the young people. She cares about them. She has guided them and helped them in this process. So I just thank you, Sarah.
What do you think of when you hear the word millennial? Is it a negative response? Positive? How many people believe that millennials are lazy, oversensitive, reliant on technology, and flaky? I want you to be honest here. Take a look around the room. Okay, how many of you also believe that millennials are tech savvy, strong communicators, innovators, and the future generation? Take another look around the room. So how many people trust or feel comfortable with millennials as leaders?
1 person. Okay, so these results are pretty surprising. If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone, and you're not wrong. However, you're also not right. There are reasons why we have these negative stereotypes of millennials, and we believe that it has a lot to do with miscommunication and negative assumptions.
Hi, I'm Vivian Hong, and for the past 2 years, I've been helping to organize and plan the API Heritage Month celebration. I'm first-generation Chinese American, and I currently work at Executive Development Institute, EDI, a nonprofit that offers culturally tailored leadership programs for professionals in the Northwest.
Hi, my name is Lauren Lane. I work for France Education Northwest, which puts on Seattle's French Fest. I am half Japanese American and half Caucasian, and both sides have been in the United States for more than 100 years. So with two different cultures in my family, I have a very unique perspective on what it means to be a leader.
I'm sure we've all been successfully putting on our respective festivals for the past 20 years, but I think it's getting to that point that we can't continue doing the same thing and expect to engage a newer, younger audience. It just doesn't make any sense. As the youngest person on my festival committee, I've been trying to push for different ways to communicate, like social media versus email chains, and also appeal to a younger crowd. Everyone communicates in a different way and enjoys different things, so why aren't we evolving and catering to that idea?
I am also the youngest permanent staff member of my organization, and part of the reason that I was brought on was because we were in need of someone who is familiar with social media, the perspective of younger people, and someone who could introduce a new and fresh perspective into our events. So we have the young people here, but how many people hold leadership roles in planning their festivals? Or how many young people are involved in their committees? The answer is a lot less than you think. Why is that? How many discussions have we had about passing the responsibilities onto the next group of leaders? A lot. We've had a lot.
In looking at the next generation of leaders, there are many negative stereotypes that undermine their credibility and capability as leaders. Many people believe millennials are unready to step into leadership positions and lack an ability to lead. While some stereotypes are true, they don't apply to the whole generation. They can also be seen as both negative and positive, yet many people focus only on the negatives. In fact, there's a lot of research pointing to millennials being strong leaders and sharing many of the same values as the generations before them. Millennials are actually incredibly loyal and highly engaged, if that environment exists for us. We value authenticity, flexibility, and opportunities to grow. If current leaders aren't investing in us, then what is our motivation in investing in them? We're brand loyal, but we also need a motivation to buy.
So we have the problem, we have the negative stereotypes, but we also see that there are many positive stereotypes to this generation. So what happens now? What happens when young leaders do not feel confident or supported by their leaders? What can we in this room do to foster a smooth leadership transition? So to counter this technology-reliant stereotype, it really helps to look at the benefits of this generation's knowledge of technology. Yes, we are glued to a lot of different screens, but think of how much those screens have changed in our lifetimes. We have had to adapt to these advances and changes. So how many of you ask your kids or your grandkids to help you with your phones or computers? So not only does this knowledge and ability to use technology benefit those coming into leadership in the age of technology and growth, but this skill also helps with effective communication. So just off of the top of my head, I can think of about 8 different ways to get in touch with somebody in less than 1 minute.
Yes, it's true that millennials want more flexibility, but we just appreciate a work-life balance. It's true that we're always glued to our phones, but in order to stay innovative and ahead in the game, you have to keep up with what's trending and what's important in society. And yes, it's true that we want to hear positive feedback and affirmations, but tell me, who doesn't thrive on recognition? In the workplace, millennials appreciate leaders who guide their teams rather than simply direct them. This is how millennials learn how to be strong leaders. So what can we in this room do to put our trust in, to grow, and to encourage tomorrow's leaders?
So for all the leaders in the room, how many of you have been told that you will not be a leader? How many of you have felt that you will not be a leader? Whether you have or you haven't, you were in our shoes before. The leaders before you probably thought that you were too young, too headstrong, and too different from them, and they didn't trust you. They were uncomfortable with passing down the reins to you.
So let's not repeat history. Instead of telling millennials they're #NotGoodLeaders, lead by example. Work alongside us and mentor us. As the generations before us, you provide important insights and experiences. As millennials, let us bring innovation and new energy to the table. And together, let's find a solution.
So in closing, for those of you who don't know what hashtags are, It's a way that makes it easier for people to search and categorize discussions and images online. So for people who believe that millennials are worth investing in and believe they're hashtag good leaders,
We don't know who you are, we don't know where you are, but we will look for you. We will find you, and we will connect with you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. I'm Vivian, and this is Lauren, and we are today's leaders.
Even in the most isolated of areas, the simple art of language still reigns supreme. If we, as a collective team, know this and still choose to remain oblivious to the importance of the contemporization of the language used here at Festál, we might as well quit while we're ahead. Words are one of the most important, most essential tools used by individuals to communicate. The right words can mean the difference between being misunderstood or being clear in your communications. So, with this information, how do we move forward? Hello, my name is Nasser Ali.
I'm Aisha Alamin.
I'm 16 years old, Somali American, and I live in Shoreline, Washington.
I'm 18 years old. I'm Irish American and African American, and I also live in Shoreline.
And so the question still remains, how can Festál's language continue to grow and evolve while also staying true to its origins and core values?
One of the largest challenges with communication is language accessibility. This can look like a lot of things. At the root, however, I believe it means to recognize the diversity of experience that people come from and acknowledging that different groups have different access to academic language.
With that framework of understanding, we can see how important representation is in connection to communications. Having a diverse group of people in age, race, gender, religion, and socioeconomic backgrounds allows for more variance and relevance in language to more communities.
It's important to consider the target audience. Depending on who you're trying to reach, your language is going to change drastically. We don't speak to people in their 20s the same way we do to people who are in their 60s because they relate to the language we're using differently.
Once you are aware of who your target audience is, it is very important to consider who is targeting the target audience. In order for an authentic connection to be created, there must be awareness of who's in the room, who is speaking to recruitment, and who is advertising or spreading the word.
Putting people at the table who have a connection to the demographic you are trying to reach is more or less essential to the growth and evolution of language at Festál.
As individuals, we need to understand what we are bringing to the table when speaking about language and communication. What favoritism or biases are we bringing, possibly even subconsciously?
And how do we as individuals fit in institutionally? What are factors that shape how we as individuals view language? Who is in the room influencing decisions about how we as a larger group communicate and what we think the proper way to do that is? What groups and demographics historically have the influence to make these powerful decisions?
Relating to and communicating to your target audience in a welcoming and non-intrusive way is essential to the progression of Festál. We need to be engaging and involved in the community. However, we must realize what it means to stay in our lanes. That means not using African American vernacular English or Ebonics because being fake woke is not cool. A lot of language that is considered to be general words used by the youth is actually language that was created for and used by Black people.
In that way, teamwork is a necessity. We all have biases for our communities, but the importance lies in whether or not we can coalesce in our backgrounds enough to share them with one another and immerse ourselves in a world different from our own.
We need a way to reinvent the way we think about certain things. That means bringing in fresh eyes, a new perspective, and more proactive thinking to help us grow and evolve in a positive, inclusive, and community-building way.
So really understanding how we interact with language and culture is not something that exists within a vacuum of our personal experience. Words have meanings, and understanding that when you say something, especially about or to communities that have been and continue to be marginalized, that you are reinforcing hundreds of years of shared experience.
We think it's essential that you understand what privileges you are working with so that you can use them to elevate the voices and ideas of those who do not carry the same privileges that you do. It's so important that we understand where we are coming from so that we don't get in the way of change.
Because of the white supremacist, xenophobic, capitalist society we live in, we are constantly making negative assumptions about language and how people from different communities use that and how they use it effectively. So we have to continue to fight against these biases, but at the same time, there are certain assumptions that must be made in speaking to and about different cultures. Those assumptions are that they're just as intelligent, capable, and ready to have these conversations.
In order to keep us from reusing these negative assumptions and keep us from using these biases and to break out of the stereotype, we have a suggestion that warrants photographers, people going out and actually speaking to the people attending these festivals, actually engaging in our audience so that we can know who the community is and who our target audience is.
So we really believe in being intentional about who you're speaking to and why you're speaking to them, and being intentional about who you're bringing into spaces and why you think it's important that they're there, and who are they representing. It's really important to look at what are we as individual leaders bringing in, who are we calling in, and who are we leaving out, perhaps even subconsciously.
Authenticity is essential. We are moving out of isolated ideas of language and into a communal sense of what that means.
Giving and receiving from each other's ideas, that's where the future leads.
Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matthew Fitzgerald. I'm half Irish, half Italian, and I've helped out with Festa Italiana on and off around 7 years, and I've been going there most of my life. We know that here at Festál, our main objective is to promote and preserve our cultures and traditions. We often showcase traditional dances and music, or have a photo exhibit, or share our traditional family meals. In short, we share our art. What is art? According to the Oxford Dictionary, it is the expression of creative skill and imagination, producing works to be appreciated for their beauty and emotional power. I would also add that art is born out of our particular cultures and is used to express and promote it. And just like culture, art is evolving. When you, our parents, our uncles and aunts, our elders migrated to this new land, you actively selected parts and elements of your art and your culture to bring with you. Elements you could adapt easily into this new place and help preserve your heritage. This active selection, curation, and fine-tuning of your art gave you a sense of ownership to your art and culture. Similarly, we, the youth who inherit your dances, your songs, your crafts, your festival, your art and culture, wish to be an active part of this process. We are different from you. The way we grew up, our sensibilities are different. But the common thread that ties us together is our art and culture. You have used this thread your way. Perhaps we want to use it similarly, or perhaps we want to alter it to fit our evolving needs.
Therefore, we request a mindful analysis of the art in our festivals. There is no denying that art is indeed still relevant and continues to be an integral part of our festivals. But we also need to ask 3 important questions. Who is creating it? Who is curating it? And who is consuming it? Who is creating art? Who is dancing the dances, writing the plays and films, painting the cultures? Are they representative of our community, or are we missing certain segments? Are we inclusive and welcoming to new artists and new works? Who is curating the art? How are we selecting each piece? Are we limiting ourselves to personal contacts? Is there a way to utilize new technologies to source out artists? Are we selecting only those who perform traditional arts, or are we willing to open up to new ways of expressing our culture? Lastly, who is consuming the art? What are our audience demographics? Are they evolving or changing? If so, are we willing and able to meet their changing needs? Do we want them to be passive consumers of our culture, or do we want them to actively participate and perhaps even own our culture? These are difficult questions to ask, But as Festál grows and evolves, we also need to make sure that our festivals grow and evolve as well. We think that it partly boils down to accessibility. How do we make our festivals more accessible to artists and their audience?
For one, we think we should be more inclusive in which forms of art to exhibit. Some of our festivals already have a film component to them, but we should also look into graphic design, digital media, and all other forms of new media to supplement our traditional programming. We're very lucky to have the support of Seattle Center and their state-of-the-art campus. We should be optimizing the use of their facilities and utilizing the available technology to enrich the festival-going experience. And doing that may mean going beyond our traditional notions of art. It may also mean going beyond our traditional notions of art curation. For instance, there could be an art competition with youth and adult competitions where the prizes are that the winners have their art displayed in the history of the festival section. This builds community and continuity and provides something that these children and young adults, who will one day be adults and elders, can show their children and grandchildren. There are so many more untapped artists out there who are waiting to share their art with the community. We can possibly use social media to run marketing campaigns or online contests that extend beyond our personal network in order to reach those new artists. Some online platforms may also help with curation. Once the art has been made and the program has been curated, the last and perhaps most important element is our audience, our community. We don't run the show just for ourselves. We do it for our community. We need their feedback in order to make sure the art in our festival stays relevant.
We can use surveys, but even just receiving informal feedback would work too. Maybe have a guest book at the info booth, or a fun interactive community board, or a voting contest to figure out which elements of our programming they found most useful and enjoyable. But most importantly, when the art in our festival is relevant, our audience, our community, gains a sense of ownership of the culture we are promoting. And one day, maybe a young audience member who was so inspired by us will grow up to be an artist, or a curator, or even both. When we serve our community also serves us back. We believe that we can all be artists, curators, and audience members. In order to do so, we have to maintain the relevance of our art and culture, and we do this by essentially making our festival accessible to each other. Art is a constant dialogue, and so is culture. As much as we want to present new ideas to you and help incorporate new media in our festivals, at the end of the day, we also know that it is important to maintain the baseline and ensure that art is still reflective of our evolving culture. Thank you very much for hearing us out. We look forward to continuing to be more active participants in our festivals so that our art and our culture may continue to be enjoyed by future generations. I'm Adrian Alarilla, a first-generation Filipino immigrant, and I have helped out with the Pagdiriwang Philippine Festival for 4 years. Good evening, everyone.
Hola, bienvenidos. My name is Aron David Garcia Virgen. I am a Mexican-American immigrant. I work for the White Center Community Development Association, and some people would consider me a millennial.
Hi, my name is Janine Gaitan. I'm a Mexican-American immigrant, and I work for CIMAR Community Health Centers. They celebrate Fiestas Patrias, and I am Generation X. To our group, Festál represents the appreciation for our culture, opportunities to share traditions, music, food, and to create a stronger community. Not just with individuals who share identities, but with all the city neighbors.
Shiva Karishki, another one of our members who couldn't be here tonight, shared a traditional Iranian story called School of Mice. It's a journey of mice who have to leave their school because a wild cat wants to eat them up. Eventually, the mice defeat the cat and go back home. For a lot of Iranian families, whether you're 8 or 80, you've heard of this story. And this story is shared with many generations. So how do we take an intergenerational approach that allows for the voice of youth to be at the center of how Festál is reimagined? Our group discussed some of the barriers that young adults face when they're given opportunities to organize. They struggle with stereotypes about being millennials and have limited opportunities to take leadership roles.
Step 1, ask yourself the following questions. Are you gatekeeper or bridge builder? Are you willing to be flexible with young adults? Are you willing to take a leap of faith and trust young adults with leadership roles? It is important for you to know that opportunity is there. Recruiting, retaining, and engaging only works when they are given autonomy and control to take the lead. Youth vote with their feet. If they are not engaged and invested, they focus on something else.
You don't know what you don't know. Failure sucks. Mistakes will happen. Sometimes we create environments where individuals are not given the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, and we focus on negativity. It is important that we hold people accountable, but it should be done in a way that builds people up instead of tearing them down. That is why, by allowing failure to be part of the process of engaging future leaders, you can create strategies that determine the roles of how these leaders will fit your program best. If youth have the opportunity to lead with a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset, you can have a new generation of stewards that can take the lead of Festál with no fear.
A common solution that people recommended for engaging the youth is give them incentives. No, I'm not saying that this is a bad idea, but not everybody is rich, at least not me. It is not important to compensate individuals who work. It is very important to compensate individuals who work hard on the project. However, money isn't the only way to reward people for a good job. People are engaged when they feel empowered. There are many opportunities to leverage learning with Festál celebrations. One solution is to work with local high schools and colleges so students can earn credit while doing an internship for Festál celebrations. Another opportunity is to work with diversity student clubs, nearby universities and high schools to create pipeline of leaders. Clubs like MECHA, Black Student Union, and Filipino American Student Association.
There's a fine line between mentors and tormentors, which reflects your organization. Are you providing opportunities to develop young adults as leaders or as bystanders? How can you grow a generation of future leaders? It's time to think outside the box. Literally, think of how we can use the space here at Seattle Center to expand Festál celebration that will interest young adults. Think of the amazing opportunities to access fun space like the Museum of Pop Culture, the Central Theater, and the Pacific Science Center, and ways to engage our future leaders. It's not just about using different spaces, but it's how we plan to use it. How can we create mentoring and leadership development opportunities that build on strong relationships intergenerationally? Ideas like business mixers, network happy hours, speed dating, or why not even Festál in the Space Needle after party.
Wow, haha.
It's also important that it's not stagnant. It's not just one day or a weekend, but it's interactive programs, classes, workshops throughout the year. Things like cooking classes, dancing classes, spoken word, poetry, and storytelling that can be done throughout the year in workshops and classes. These activities can later be used to support future programs here at Festál.
Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, just they name some of the options that we have with social media. It is important to remember that these are tools that we use to immerse ourselves with our network community, but the key word is tools. In order to effectively use these tools to create community, our future leaders need to be given the opportunity, guidance, and support to use it. Consider how can you give a leadership a role around social media so that can young adults promote Festál events and help a stronger sense of connections with the culture. Use multimedia to connect with people all over the world when they are celebrating Festál in simultaneous cultural events. This is a chance to learn and embrace contemporary music and new customs that they being developed in real time at the countries and cultures of origin that Festál celebrating here in Seattle.
As we begin to summarize our presentation, the main point we hope we got across is giving our young leaders the space they need to step into leadership roles. Volunteers are sometimes berated and told that they can't do this or they have to do it this way. The reason I bring this up is that our future leaders want to be engaged and participate, but oftentimes they're given roles to just sit there and watch. These are so the following are some recommendations that we hope you can take into consideration so that we can build our leaders up. Consider giving young adults seats at the table as board members in your different organizations. Incorporate leadership roles in which staff members mentor and give leadership development for young adults. Designate a youth keynote speaker in all of your future programs. So thank you for tonight, and I hope we helped.
Hi, my name is Gabriela. I'm 27 years old, and I am first generation from a proud Colombian family.
Hi, my name is Tai Nguyen. I'm a first-generation immigrant, 26-year-old.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 17 years old, and I'm half African American and half Caucasian. We say this not to limit ourselves to these identities, but to show the diversity that exists between the three of us. Gabriela, Tai, and I cover a large age spectrum, and we all have different cultural experiences. But we all share the feeling of wanting to be engaged in the conversation of culture and heritage, but we do not feel that the space is available to us. Those who know me know that I am not a festival person. I have worked in the cultural programs office with Steve Sneed and Sarah Leon Moreno for the past 2 summers, and I've absolutely loved it. But before this experience, I had not heard of Festál, but I've since then attended. However, it hasn't felt like my space. I never felt that the festivals provided everything that my ideal cultural outlet would. I felt disconnected to the festivals that I had worked so closely with for the past 2 summers. While I cannot speak for every young person in my age group, I found that many of my peers feel the same. I was asked to evaluate one of the festivals this summer, and I invited my friend to come along with me. My friend is very polite and would never wish to offend me, but he respectfully declined. He's very involved in cultural work, but he felt that going to the festival would leave him wanting more. I have found that these feelings aren't limited to my friend and me. Our age group is relentless and hungry. We want change, but we don't know where we fit into the conversation. We can't find our place or our role, but we crave a cross-generational relationship. Festál opened the door to celebration and appreciation of different cultures, a valuable success and gift from the generation before ours. It is a foundation we see can be built off of to better engage this current generation. Festál was created during a time of greater intolerance and greater lack of knowledge. It was created to break deep-rooted stereotypes, but times have changed, and there are a multitude of new issues we believe Festál can consider. Now we can take the next step.
How do we add deeper insight and perception in addition to the celebration of each other's cultures? We believe this can only happen through building a more expansive relationship with one another. These deeper relationships would be developed by addressing our realities. Gentrification, colorism, and a general blindness to one another are some of the fights we experience daily, and we need our festivals to be a part of them. To welcome my culture, I need to acknowledge everything my culture has to deal with. I can't go to a Day of the Dead festival and not acknowledge that many in the same room are exposed to a real fear of deportation. I came to a discussion on race, culture, and identity in the Pacific Northwest, hosted by Seattle Center and the Seattle Public Library, in search of this opportunity for a deep cultural conversation, to explore opportunities to engage and to hear the conversations that are happening in my community. These experiences at the panel allowed me to engage with my culture and the people in it. I was able to talk about my own experiences in the Pacific Northwest and how it related to my identity, a cultural identity I often spend defending or escaping from, something I'm tired of having as my daily norm. This is exactly what I needed, although it's just a taste of what I'm looking for. However, I was able to see that we can have these conversations. I am still aimlessly searching for more of these opportunities, and I want these deep conversations to be available to me on every cultural experience. These conversations are important to us so that we can better understand our own culture, identity, and context. Remaining observers to other cultures, isolated within our own cultures, does not challenge us to change or expand the roles we play in supporting our communities. We've learned that we cannot understand our own identities without experience or interacting with others. I know we're asking for more, but it's what we need to hold on to hope. We'd like to grow within our own communities as we foster our own cultural identities, taking a step back into our cultures. Festál could provide this opportunity.
Imagine this. In addition to Festál, monthly interracial, intergenerational, and cultural discussions. A safe space where, regardless of whether tensions get high, people stay committed to listening and engaging in healthy communication. I experienced this type of space firsthand, living in Los Angeles. I joined a monthly nonviolence workshop led for the last 15 years by Reverend Lawson, one of the last living people to have worked directly with Martin Luther King Jr. Here we sat, united with the intention to listen to the Reverend talk about nonviolent activism, but also to each other's opinions and hurts and life experiences. I witnessed and experienced the power of exposure and a willingness to admit wrong and commit to becoming better. We are restless for this type of transformative discussion between different races and cultures. We believe providing a safe space for this type of discussion will generate engagement for youth, giving them a space to not only learn from those who have come before them, but also to be heard. Festál opened the opportunity to observe and admire each other's cultures. And we want to build off of this with you to create a space where everyone is welcome, of all different races and ages and backgrounds. The dream is that these discussions can plant a seed of change in our community, welcoming vulnerability and a willingness to grow with one another. Thank you.
Maya Angelou says that people won't remember what you do, people won't remember what you say, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And one of the things when people ask me about what vision do I have for Seattle Center, I always talk to them about, I'm not into building buildings and creating temples to say that this is what happened on our watch. I want Seattle Center to be a place where people feel included, engaged, connected, part of something bigger than themselves, part of something that makes our community bigger, stronger. I want to see people feel delighted, inspired. I want them to be something that will build and create something that would be a benefit not just to Seattle Center, but to our community as a whole. So having these young people come up and talk about how they may become the next generation of Festál producers is just really, really important, but really inspiring to me. Another quote I love, and I used to have it on my door, and they took that down because they like to put posters of all of our events on my door now, is that, and this is from my own experience about growing into a leader and in my career. I learned more, and I hate to say this, but I learned more watching people do things that I would say not to do than I did from people who told me what to do. And I learned, over and over again that if I ever got into a position, I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't do that, because I remember how it made me feel. And that was a very important lesson for me. So I tell you, young people, my other favorite quote, one of my other favorite quotes is, be the change you want to see. So The couple things, and I wrote it, like I said, I got a whole page of notes. I'm going to read just a couple of things that I wrote down, and then we can all get out of here, but this is very inspiring. I think that it's very important. The first group talked about leadership, and they talked about, having mentors and having people who can help them become or empowering them to become. A lot of us, in my generation, for instance, we don't know if we can connect with millennials or young people or teenagers or what have you. We don't know if someone would look at me and say, oh, you're just old, dude, you don't know what you're talking about or what. But if you were to come to someone like me and say, I respect or I admire or I like the way you're doing this, or I like what you do at Seattle Center. I would really like to hang out for a day and see how that works, or can you help me with the way of how you go about or think about things? I would be blown away. And you and I would be having a great time together for the next whatever, and so on. So it's not a challenge, but a suggestion. Ask. Go talk to some people and make sure that they understand that you want to learn from them. I love that the second group talked about the power of words. Now that, we all can do things. I can give you some things that's in my history and growing up, that there's a couple words that if you say that, it's on. And so we're going to have some issues. And as we used to say, we're going to move some furniture. So, but the power of words. They can bite, they can stab, they can do damage, but they can also unite, they can inspire. And so how you communicate with people is very important. And so I love this idea of incorporating young people into things that we may be doing, because that fresh eye, fresh approach, different viewpoint could be not only very enlightening, but the words that come out of that could be incredibly empowering and help us with our communication. I love the question from the third group that says, what is art? Because I've always had this question, what is art and who gets to decide? Because who gets to decide then gets to define what we celebrate, what we respect, what we believe is great, what we think is wonderful. And so this notion of who is creating, who is curating, and who is consuming, I love that. Getting back to how do we be inclusive in the definition of what art is, and we're inclusive in who gets to decide. Those things are very important. I also love the notion of growth versus fixed mindset. So very, very thought-provoking. And the couple of comments about there's a fine line between mentors and tormentors. I love that. Absolutely love that. I'll be using that one tomorrow. There was also a notion that there was a challenge made by the group that said, how might we use the assets here at Seattle Center differently? I love this because I made this challenge to my team, a couple of years ago and said, how might we use these assets differently? And you know what came of that? The health clinic that was going to happen at the end of this month, our 4th year of that. That came out of that challenge that we had. So the power of that is very, very real. And I want you to know that if you have ideas about how to use our assets differently, now I can't get you up on the Space Needle. That's a private entity. But our assets differently. Challenge us to let you do that. I love that. And this notion that as for young people, space needs to be created for them. That's not a whiny, that's not a, that's real. If you're not valued, if you're not engaged, if you're not included, you don't matter. And you have to give them the opportunity to walk into and to embrace space. So I think that's a very important thing. Now I got to be able to read my own writing. Oh, okay. And I'll end with this one. The last group had a suggestion, I won't call it a recommendation, but they said, wouldn't it be great if we had monthly discussions around intergenerational, interracial, intercultural discussions to get to real issues? Think about where we are as a country, as a nation, as a city, think of the pain and suffering that people go through. Think of the bubbles that people are in. Think of where they don't have an opportunity, where their whole world is surrounded by like-minded people or like-minded things. And how, if we were to break through that and bring people together, think about what the power and the transformational power that could be. I love that. We'll be talking about how to do that tomorrow. And so I just want to say it's even though I didn't dress for this, this is wonderful. And I want to applaud one more time all of the presenters. They did a fantastic job. And I'd like to applaud all the people that organized this to provide that voice and that ability for folks to communicate. And I love the fact, and I want to say to all of the Festál producers, thank you so much for coming to hear this. You're valuing your young people and you're telling them that they matter. And that is very, very, very important. Thank you.